All things bright and beautiful. Good morning, friends. Grace and peace to you from United Protestant Church in Morgan Park, Duluth, Minnesota, where the air is crisp and clear this morning, and all the flowers are starting to bloom, including the dandelions. Boy, there are a lot this year, everywhere. And some of us were up late, following the difficult news in our community and in our country. And we name it today. We name it today and we claim it as our own as Christians in fellowship. And we lift it up today to the light and love of God. So come in. Come in this moment and let us together still our minds and open our hearts to welcome God's presence this day. I forgot I was going to list the page numbers as I'm talking. Forgive me, friends. But that's at the beginning of the hymnal, so you can figure that one out. Friends, it is Pentecost Sunday, a big day in the church. Now hear these words from the Acts of the Apostles. When the day of Pentecost had come, they were all together in one place, and suddenly from heaven there came a sound like the rush of a violent wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. Divided tongues as of fire appeared among them, and a tongue rested on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other languages as the Spirit gave them ability. Now there were devout Jews from every nation under heaven living in Jerusalem, and at this sound the crowd gathered and was bewildered because each one heard them speaking in a native language of each. Amazed and astonished, they asked, Are not all these who are speaking Galileans? And how is it we hear, each of us in our own native language, Parthians, Medes, Elamites, and residents of Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes, Cretans and Arabs. In our own languages, we hear them speaking about God's deeds of power. All were amazed and perplexed, saying to one another, What does this mean? But others sneered and said, They are filled with new wine. But Peter, standing with the 11, raised his voice and addressed them. Men of Judea and all who live in Jerusalem, let this be known to you and listen to what I say. Indeed, they are not drunk as you suppose, for it is only 9 o'clock in the morning. No, this is what was spoken through the prophet Joel. In the last days it will be, God declares, that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even upon my slaves, both men and women, in those days I will pour out my spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show portents in the heaven above, and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and smoky mist. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the Lord's great and glorious day. Then everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. It is so great to have music in this place again. Friends, there are times in church life when our hearts and minds are occupied by something that feels bigger than what we're accustomed to on a Sunday, bigger than our tradition or our ritual or our habit. And friends, there's the time in a pastor's life where the usual exegesis and message on the gospel feels lukewarm at best. And then I read a fellow pastor's notes this week, and I see these words she wrote to her colleagues. This is no time, she wrote, this is no time for fence-riding, lukewarm, tiptoeing leaders. And I'm reminded then of the words of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. One should preach with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the others. That's paraphrased, but something very close to that. So I make a shift on this Pentecost Sunday with a clear understanding that everything happening in our country is not separate or peripheral from our Sunday worship. And indeed, it is not separate or peripheral to our faith. In fact, worrying and fretful times are precisely when we live into our faith. Brian Doyle once wrote, "The story of our lives is grace under duress." What has risen up in our lives now, and I do say risen up because this is nothing new. This is just being brought out of the shadows and into the light. What has risen up matters to us. Matters this morning as we pray together, matters as we hold God's presence close in our discernment as a Christian community. So, friends, I tried to write a commentary about it on Friday. A commentary about race, division, and judgment from the context of my own experiences. Friends, I've been given the great gift, the gift of education. And I lift up time I shared in racism dialogue groups. I lift up my engagement in study and prayer and faith, my role in being lifted up from this people, as is our tradition here, as a spiritual and faith leader. Again, this is no time, my friend wrote, for fence-riding, lukewarm, tiptoeing leaders. I have thought and prayed and written and explained page after page. When I went to send it on Friday, it was over 4 pages long. You don't need that. You don't deserve that. Because this is not a time for me to be showing off and exercising what I know. This is a time to share my heart. God's rhythm in my heart. So this is what I wrote, and I want to share it with you. You see, it was a line from the Acts of the Apostles this morning that jumped off the page as I followed it through the week. Chapter 2, verse 8. And how is it we hear, each of us, in our own native language? Acts 2, verse 8. I build off that. Can't we all just get along? Can't we all just get along? That's what I hear over and over in church and community conversations when we talk about race. I mean, why are they so messed up? They, in quotations, referring to the other. The other, be it the white supremacist, the angry black man, the meth head in the blighted apartment, the single mother whose children's behavior really bothers us, that guy who doesn't give a damn about anybody but himself, the girl that manipulates men to get what she needs, Here's the deal. We can get along. But in order to do that, we have to recognize and honor the true humanity of those we describe as the other. Okay, that's pastor speak, isn't it? So let me put it another way. Every one of those angry people that bother us, no matter what we think of them, are deeply loved by God. Repeat. Each selfish or rude or, at this point, pick your own adjective and target of disgust in your mind right now. Each one of them is God's own beloved, no matter what you or any of your friends or any social media posts say differently about it. Deeply loved by God. God's own beloved. It's maddening, isn't it? But that's what Jesus taught us. I like to say the phrase, you don't have to like them, but you do have to love them. And frankly, that kind of sucks. Pardon my language. Pardon my language, but you see, there are people who I'd like to slap upside of the head. There are people I'd be happy to never encounter again in this life. There are people whom I think cause more harm than good in this world, more crucifixion than resurrection. And, excuse me. And sometimes I think that maybe it'd be better if they no longer were active participants in this life. Wait. Yeah, that ain't right. I mean, I don't even know them, really. Did I really just go there? Because I have in my thoughts, friends, and I'm sure all of us have. You see, all of those jerks, as I call them, that I'm thinking of here, have a history and a story and a truth of their lives that have shaped and colored their lives with the behavior and the bluster that they presently express now. Just like you. I know, you don't bluster because you're Minnesotan and all, but you know what I mean. Oh, and by the way, this is good to remember, someone out there, known to you or not, thinks you're a big jerk. I mean, they might have let it go, they say, or you think they have, but they haven't forgotten. You know how these people are. So I lift all of this, all of these emotions, all of this energy, all this prayer up to God, and I'm reminded that I have to ask this question. Do I know their story? See, that's what I'm thinking. It is our call as Christians to honor their story and to hold it as true, their truth. We don't have to agree with their conclusions or behave just like they do, but their story is their truth. I grew up with racism in the suburbs of Chicago. In my preteen years, I remember in Des Plaines, Illinois, if you named a fairly major road, I could tell you what ethnicity lived there and what my people thought about them. At the Central Park that we all shared together, the black kids played basketball, the Latinos played soccer, and the white kids did Little League. We knew what we thought about the other. By the teen years, my people moved out. White flight is what they called it. And I'll just let that phrase sit there. And by high school, I wound up living in a community without much soul, without any tradition, with the white middle class looking back and commuting to the city. So I sit now on the porch here in Morgan Park, Duluth, Minnesota, and wave and chat and do my cheesy Paul thing here in this porch drinking springtime that we have to the neighbors that walk along. Strollers and training wheels and joggers and slow pokes, fluffy dogs and rat dogs and yoga pants and cargo shorts. Some are new here in this town. Some have been here since they had to wipe the dust off their windows from the concrete plant. Some remember the old grocery store. Some never even got to hang out at the Iron Mug. Do I mention class? Do I mention color? Or political values, or who they are and what I think of them? No. I listen to their stories. They are real. And like it or not, Mr. Pablo Van, you know that it is good to let them know that they are beloved children of God. Friends, I believe that. And by believe, I mean I do whatever I can with all the fits and starts that I have in my life to live into being that person. So here's where the cheesy sermon part comes in. If you haven't had enough cheese from me yet today, you knew it was coming. I am reminded in my prayer and lifting all of this to the light and love of God that paintings are beautiful for the balance and the contrast of colors, not uniformity. I am reminded that if I mix them all those different and seemingly opposing colors, if I mix them all together and try to make them all the same, they turn into this really gross, brown, yucky, gray color. And so I learned to celebrate colors in my life and honor the contrast and the balance of each of them. Let's go Bob Ross on this one. We all know Bob Ross, right? Sky and earth and happy little trees. After all, we do have enough gray and brown up here, at least 6 months of it, right? Each story, each truth of each individual is the unique color of their lives and their loves. And they are, friends, be they celebrating or suffering, struggling or standing tall, at peace or angry, eloquent or bellicose, powerful, meek, accepting, or intolerant. What I need to know and I need to remember is that they are beloved children of God. And how is it we hear, each of us, in our own native language, we read in Acts this morning? God's message to us. How is it we hear, each in our own native language, God's message to us? You, or he, or she, or that other we think of, you are a beloved child of God. So let's take that message, friends, and walk that way in our lives of faith. Friends, Christians, these are the moments that we, as Jesus-following Christians, are made for. These are the moments where God's last word of love is ringing off our lips and moving through our hands and heads and hearts to reflect that gorgeous message. This is precisely the time that our faith should shine. Peace be with you, friends. I just want to sit here and sing that song all day. Remind me next week, I will give you page numbers, okay? Sorry about that. We come to a time of joys and concerns. I'll be honest, I have nothing written down. So we're going to work on this together, those of us in the group, and we'll remember as we go. First, I want to share again that we are not sharing individual names and joys and concerns right now because we're publishing this message publicly. And you are most welcome and encouraged to join the prayer chain in our prayer time together. But we know there is so much struggle and hurt and suffering around us, both in our community of faith and our greater community, let alone our country. I don't even think there's a single one-liner or small aphorism I could say about what's happening in our country right now, the suffering and the anger. Of course, I just preached a sermon on it, so I guess that means something, but it's all lifted to the light and the love of God. It's all in remembering we are all, every single one of us, beloved children of God. We care for each other. We look out for each other. In that spirit, mask drive. When is that? Saturday at, anybody remember? 10 to noon. This Saturday at the church from 10 to noon, we're handing out masks. If you need one or know of someone who needs one, or you want an extra, come on by. We'll be outside, I believe, in a table to share the masks. What else? I want to thank those that are lovingly caring for our grounds when we're not present here regularly and caring for the building. The flowers look gorgeous in the memorial garden. And I want to thank this community for sharing your offerings. As you know, and I'll repeat again, we rely so heavily on plate giving in this church. We don't have a big, rich endowment. So when we don't gather, we could run the risk of struggling very fast. So please continue, and thank you for sharing and giving the gifts to the church. You can mail them, or we have a private slot in our mailbox. Just drop it off if you're passing by. I know there's more. Anything out there? There's so much more to share. But we walk together and we talk together, and so much we keep silent in our hearts as well. We lift this all right now to the light and love of God. Let's take a time of prayer. Holy and loving and beautiful God, God that graces us with all the colors of this day, all the colors of the souls on this earth, we give you thanks for this very moment of our lives, this breath of our life, this beat of our heart. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Holy God. We give you thanks for our faith and your presence walking with us every step. And Holy God, I ask your blessing on all the souls in this room, on all who receive this message, be it through video or written word. Be with them. Help them to know your comfort. Help them to feel your patience and your gift of discernment. And give them wisdom sufficient just for this day, Holy God, to use their faith, their hands, their heads, their hearts, to speak your last word to all they encounter, because, God, we know we need it. Be with us, Holy God. Let us know your love. In this community, in this world that suffers both in pandemic and in anger and violence and in injustice, hold us to your light. Help us to balance and temper our judgment with humility and love. And God, I ask your blessing on all who suffer today and struggle, be it from physical or mental illness, gripped in the pangs of anger or rage or judgment. Be a light in their lives, Holy God. And I ask your blessing on this church, this community of faith, this sanctuary that we are. Guide us, Holy God, to do your holy work as you call us to. And now, dear God, bind us together as one community of faith as we share the prayer that your Son taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed would be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Friends, I hope and I pray that as we walk out those doors, we feel God's presence with us and around us, guiding us and encouraging us to be that holy last word of love he so always shares. Peace be with you, friends. And friends, I pass out the Clorox wipes that we clean our respective area. Peace be with you.